David Visentin has spent years helping families find their dream homes, always smiling, always confident. But behind that charm lies a chapter of his life he never wanted the world to see, a moment so devastating it nearly broke him completely. What happened when the cameras stopped rolling would change David's life forever. From the very first moment he stepped onto television screens, David Visentin seemed to have that rare, effortless charisma that pulled people in. Viewers of Love It or List It instantly recognized him as the smooth-talking real estate expert who could find the perfect home in even the trickiest of markets. Paired with designer Hilary Farr, David became one half of a duo that entertained millions while guiding homeowners through the emotional tug-of-war between renovating their current property or moving on to a new one. With his easy smile, quick wit, and competitive banter with Hilary, he became a symbol of warmth and reliability in the world of home renovation shows. Fans loved his confidence, his sharp professional instincts, and that unmistakable twinkle in his eye when he managed to sway a family toward listing rather than loving their home. Off-screen interviews painted him as a man who loved his job, enjoyed the challenge of real estate, and valued every opportunity to connect with people. But television, like any polished production, only tells part of the story. What audiences saw was a well-dressed, quick-thinking professional gliding through every episode with ease. What they didn't see were the countless hours of preparation, the early mornings on location, and the behind-the-scenes pressures that come with being the face of a successful series. To the outside world, David was living a dream career, balancing real estate expertise with television fame. What truly set him apart, however, wasn't just his skill in selling homes, it was his ability to read people. David had a natural gift for understanding what made a family tick. He could sense hesitation in a buyer's tone, notice a shift in body language, or recognize the quiet moment when someone's heart leaned toward staying put. It was this human touch that made him more than just a TV personality. It made him a trusted presence in countless living rooms across North America. Over the years, his popularity soared. Fan meet and greets turned into long lines of people eager to shake his hand, take a photo, or share how his advice on the show had inspired their own home buying decisions. Social media lit up with viewers praising his charm and professionalism. Producers knew they had struck gold with his on-screen chemistry, and new seasons were greenlit year after year. But the thing about television is that it thrives on illusion. Smiles can be rehearsed, banter can be edited, and while David excelled at delivering the energy audiences loved, it required constant effort, an effort that came with invisible costs. For every confident stride into a beautifully staged home, there were moments of exhaustion, moments where the weight of his schedule and personal life pressed heavily on his shoulders. Friends described David as someone who never wanted to disappoint, whether it was a homeowner on set, a fan at an event, or a colleague behind the scenes. That dedication made him a consummate professional, but it also meant he rarely paused to take care of himself. The demands of the job left little room for slowing down. And David, ever the gentleman, didn't want to let cracks show in his carefully maintained image. Still, he knew that television fame was a delicate thing. One wrong move, one public misstep, and it could all unravel. So he kept the challenges private, wearing that charming smile like armor. The cameras rolled, the episodes aired, and the world saw a man who seemed to have it all. And yet, under the surface, his life was not the glossy, perfectly staged picture that fans imagined. The man who could light up a room with his presence was quietly navigating storms that never made it into the final cut of the show. But away from the bright lights and friendly banter, David's life was far from picture perfect, and soon, the cracks in his seemingly perfect world would begin to show. The hidden struggles behind the smile. Television has a way of magnifying the best parts of a person while keeping the rest in shadow. For David Visentin, this was both a blessing and a burden. To millions, he was the confident figure who could walk into any property, assess its potential, and present a polished plan to transform someone's life. Behind that charm was a man learning to live with the constant pressures that came with being in the public eye. Filming a successful series was not as simple as stepping in front of a camera. Each episode demanded meticulous planning, long hours on set, and an endless cycle of traveling between properties, studios, and meetings. The schedule often left little time to rest, and even less to reflect. Early mornings blended into late nights as production deadlines loomed, with each season bringing an expectation to match or surpass the last. There were moments when David would arrive at a filming location before sunrise, only to leave after the sky had gone dark again. Even when the cameras stopped rolling, work continued in the form of meetings with homeowners, negotiations with sellers, and the constant reviewing of upcoming shoots. To viewers, his energy seemed boundless, but in reality, the pace was wearing him down. This unrelenting routine also meant time away from home. Being away from loved ones for weeks at a time created a quiet ache that lingered in the background. While fans saw him as the man who could solve any real estate dilemma, he was privately dealing with the strain of balancing professional commitments with personal responsibilities. The line between work and life blurred until it was almost non-existent. The expectations placed on him extended beyond filming. As the public face of a hit show, he was expected to attend promotional events, give interviews, and maintain an approachable persona. Even on days when he felt emotionally drained, there was little choice but to put on a warm smile and deliver the charisma that people had come to expect. Any sign of fatigue risked being misinterpreted as disinterest or arrogance, and that was a risk he could not take. Social media amplified this pressure. Messages from viewers poured in constantly, most filled with praise, but some carrying criticism that could sting far more than fans realized. Every public appearance, every word spoken, every facial expression was analyzed, discussed, and sometimes taken out of context. Living under such constant scrutiny meant that there was rarely a moment when he could simply exist without performing. Friends noticed the change. In private, he was quieter, more thoughtful, sometimes lost in his own world. The easy laughter and quick banter that came so naturally on screen became less frequent in quiet moments. The weight of maintaining an image while privately managing fatigue was taking its toll. He was still the same kind and generous man, but it was clear that the demands of his career were slowly chipping away at the calm center that had once defined him. It was not just the pace that created this strain. The unpredictability of the entertainment industry meant that no matter how popular a show was, there was always an undercurrent of uncertainty. Contracts had to be renewed, ratings had to remain strong, networks had to be convinced that the series still had life in it. That uncertainty hung in the background, a silent reminder that stability could vanish without warning. Through it all, David kept his struggles largely to himself. He did not want sympathy, nor did he want to burden others with his stress. To his colleagues, he remained a professional who arrived prepared and delivered results. To his fans, he was the charismatic host they adored. To himself, he was someone trying to hold everything together, even as the cracks beneath the surface began to widen. And then, a deeply personal loss would shake the foundation of his world, revealing just how fragile that carefully maintained image truly was. A loss that changed everything. In the months following the quiet struggles that had begun to weigh on him, David faced a change he could neither control nor fully prepare for. After more than a decade of working side by side, his longtime co-host Hilary Farr announced she was leaving Love It or List It. It was more than just a shift in the production lineup, it was the loss of a constant presence in his professional life. From the earliest days of the show, Hilary had been his counterpart, his friendly rival, and in many ways the other half of its heartbeat. Their playful debates, their competitive energy, and their ability to push each other toward better solutions had become the foundation on which the program's success was built. The announcement came as a surprise to fans, but for David, the reality had been sinking in for some time. In private conversations, Hilary had spoken about the need to step away, to focus on new projects and personal goals. While he understood and respected her decision, it didn't lessen the sense of loss that came with it. This was not just a co-worker leaving, it was the end of a partnership that had defined his career for over a decade. On the day they filmed their final episode together, the atmosphere on set felt different. The usual lighthearted teasing carried an undertone of bittersweet reflection. Every scene, every shared look, felt like the closing of a chapter neither of them could fully replicate. When the cameras stopped rolling for the last time that day, David found himself standing in the familiar set, but it felt emptier than he had ever known it. The change struck him harder than he expected. Professionally, it meant adapting to an entirely new dynamic. Personally, It felt like losing an anchor, someone who had been there through the highs and lows, who understood the unique pressures of the role without him having to explain. As word of Hillary's departure spread, messages poured in from viewers. Some expressed sadness, others curiosity about what would come next. Many openly wondered how the show could go on without the chemistry they had shared. Reading those comments was both humbling and daunting. The audience had fallen in love with them as a duo, and now he would be asking them to embrace a new version of the show without that familiar pairing. This professional loss carried an emotional weight he hadn't anticipated. While change is inevitable in the entertainment world, certain bonds feel unshakable until they are gone. Hillary's exit served as a reminder that even the most enduring collaborations have an ending. David knew the only way forward was to embrace the change, but doing so meant letting go of what had felt like a defining chapter of his life. It wasn't about replacing Hillary or recreating the same energy. They both knew that was impossible. It was about honoring what they had built together while stepping into an uncertain future with the same dedication that had carried him this far. As the next season approached, the familiar thrill of production was now mixed with a quiet apprehension. He was stepping into familiar spaces, but they didn't feel quite the same. Every new filming day was a reminder of the absence, and every scene required him to find a fresh rhythm. It was the kind of loss that wasn't marked by public mourning, yet its impact was profound. The cameras captured smiles, new ideas, and a commitment to moving forward, but behind the scenes, David carried the weight of knowing that a chapter of his career and a partnership that had shaped it had truly come to an end. But just as he began adjusting to life without his closest professional ally, another challenge emerged, one that struck far closer to home, testing his resilience in ways his career never had. Carrying the weight. David Visentin's calm and charismatic presence on television hides the challenges that shaped him long before fame found its way into his life. Born in Toronto, Ontario, he grew up in a modest household where the value of hard work was instilled early. His parents, though loving and supportive, faced their own financial limitations. There were times when the family had to carefully budget for even the most basic needs, and young David quickly learned the importance of perseverance and resilience. Those formative years were marked by moments when dreams seemed distant, but he held on to the belief that effort could change the course of one's life. In his early teens, David faced an environment where opportunities did not come easily. Unlike those who grew up surrounded by luxury, he had to navigate his ambitions with little margin for error. He discovered an early interest in real estate through his father, who occasionally dabbled in property deals. This sparked his curiosity, but his path was not immediately clear. Breaking into the competitive property market was far from easy, and every step forward required overcoming skepticism and rejection. Before television, David spent years building his real estate career. This period was not without setbacks. The property market is known for its unpredictability, and he endured several difficult stretches when deals fell through and commissions were scarce. These moments tested not only his financial stability but also his confidence. Yet, he pressed on, learning that every failed negotiation was a lesson in patience and strategy. When Love It or List It entered his life, it appeared to be the culmination of years of dedication. However, fame brought a new set of challenges. Being in the public eye meant that every gesture, word, and decision could be scrutinized, praised, or criticized by millions. Viewers developed expectations of his personality, and any deviation from this perceived image could lead to waves of online speculation. The same charm that made him a household name also meant that strangers felt entitled to judge his personal choices and relationships. The pressure of public life often collided with private struggles. Balancing filming schedules with family commitments became an ongoing challenge. Being away from home for extended periods strained his personal relationships, especially during critical moments when his loved ones needed him most. There were instances when he missed important family events due to production commitments, leaving behind a quiet guilt that he carried even while smiling for the cameras. Adding to this burden was the emotional impact of fan expectations. People who admired him often assumed that his life off-screen mirrored the polished and composed version they saw on television. In reality, there were days when the exhaustion of maintaining his career and public image weighed heavily on him. He sometimes found himself wishing for the anonymity he once had. a life where he could walk through the streets unnoticed, without having to wear a constant mask of positivity. Despite these personal and professional pressures, David never allowed his hardships to overshadow his gratitude for the opportunities he earned. He channeled his early struggles into a determination to make the most of every project, and his past experiences became a source of empathy for others facing similar challenges. Yet those who know him well understand that the smiling host has endured far more than most viewers will ever realize. What makes David's journey even more poignant is how much of his pain he has kept private. He rarely speaks openly about his toughest moments, preferring instead to focus on lifting the mood of those around him. But beneath that steady voice and warm demeanor is a man who has carried the weight of early life struggles, professional setbacks, and the relentless demands of public scrutiny, and who continues to push forward, determined to honor the path he fought so hard to create. The story takes an even more emotional turn when David's world was shaken, forcing him to confront grief, while millions continue to see only the polished surface. What happened behind the scenes will change how you view him forever. Family pressures and private heartache. David's life away from cameras has always belonged first to the people he loves. He married Visentin in 2006 in a private ceremony attended by close friends and family, a choice that reflected both their desire for privacy and the deliberate way they built a life together. Krista has long preferred to keep the personal side of their marriage out of tabloids and trending feeds, and the couple have guarded that quiet corner of their world carefully. Krista's presence has been steady and understated. Several profiles identify her as Krista Visentin and note her work in real estate, a shared profession that helped the couple connect early on, and which provided practical grounding when David's on-screen life demanded long hours and travel. Over the years, she has been described as the stabilizing force who manages much of the family's private life behind the scenes. That shared background in property helped keep conversations between them simple and focused, but it did not make balancing public life with family life any easier. The couple are parents to a son, Logan, who was born in 2011. Parenthood arrived 5 years after their marriage and changed the rhythm of their days in ways that stardom could not replicate. Logan has been kept intentionally out of the limelight. The family prioritizes normalcy and routines that most children expect, even when a parent's job can uproot those routines at a moment's notice. That deliberate privacy has been part of the couple's pact from the beginning. They live in Ontario and have been rooted there as David's career on television expanded. Sources consistently mention Barrie and nearby towns as the family's home base, a place chosen for family life rather than show business glamour. The decision to stay in Ontario reflects a conscious choice to keep home life geographically separate from the pressures of production and publicity. That separation gives them quieter days and fewer uninvited intrusions. Even with those protective choices, the trade-offs of public work were constant. Long filming blocks and promotional appearances meant missing school events, short holidays, and everyday rituals that cannot be recorded and replayed. Krista took on much of the daily steadiness so that their son could have the consistency he needed. Those sacrifices were rarely broadcast, but they shaped the private architecture of their marriage. David has spoken in general terms about the importance of family, while intentionally steering clear of offering up private moments for headlines. That restraint has been part of how they weathered the unusual pressures fame brings. There were quiet tensions that came not from scandal, but from the cumulative effect of being apart when closeness was needed most. Missed birthdays and school recitals were small losses that accumulate into a larger, more complicated feeling. The couple addressed that by carving out meaningful, intentional time together when schedules allowed. Those choices did not erase the cost of distance, but they reinforced a commitment that underpinned the marriage. The way they handled it was private and pragmatic, rather than performative. For David, the hardest reckonings came in private reflection. The applause could not replace bedtime stories or the texture of everyday family life. Fame changed how the family arranged its days, but it did not change what they wanted for one another. Protecting that private life became its own project, one that needed as much care as any renovation or sale ever had. And then, one fateful day brought a decision that would change everything. The day that broke him. It was early spring, trees just tilting toward green, a cool breeze inching its way through open windows of the production trailer. David had landed in Halifax to film a 2-day renovation feature, and the morning light was just bright enough to warm the room. He sipped his coffee, scanning the script for the day's plan: client meet, house tour, options presentation. The rhythm was familiar, practiced. Then his phone buzzed. The name on the screen was not one he'd expected: Krista. His pulse shifted even before he answered. Her voice was tight, breathless. She spoke quickly, one sentence at a time, and David's world got smaller with each word. Their son, Logan, had collapsed earlier that morning during soccer practice. He'd been taken to the pediatric clinic. That much David understood. Krista was calm, but the undertone in her voice beneath the surface calm spoke louder. Something was wrong. David's hands shook so badly he had to set down his coffee. The light spilled across his notebook. The words on the page blurred. The itinerary, the lighting plans, the jokes he'd practiced with the designer. None of it mattered anymore. Seconds felt like minutes. He told the assistant director he'd be delayed. Told the producer he needed to go. No one asked questions, just shaky nods, sympathetic looks. He shoved his script into a backpack and jogged out of the trailer into the bright morning that somehow felt suffocating. At the hospital, the smell of antiseptic and the hum of monitors greeted him. Logan lay on a gurney inside a small exam room, his face pale, eyes closed. A nurse hovered outside, stepping aside as David entered. He swallowed, walked to the gurney, placed his hand on Logan's damp forehead. The child, half-grown but still his boy, looked too small, too vulnerable. The doctor followed a moment later and delivered news about a seizure, possibly related to a mild virus, maybe something more serious. They would run tests, keep Logan overnight for observation. David felt as though someone had shut the door on his chest. He sat beside his son's bed, taking Logan's small hand, feeling the warmth and grip and fragile heartbeat that no television script could ever replicate. Outside the window, spring light shifted, pale and cool. A single paper crane Logan had folded sat at the edge of the bedside table, crumpled but still recognizable. David gently smoothed it, tears catching in his throat. Someone, a nurse? Krista? Slid in a warm blanket around Logan that smelled faintly of lavender, Logan's favorite. The scent cracked something open inside David. He swallowed hard, eyes stinging. David's phone buzzed again. This time's message was from a producer, wondering when he'd return. He stared at it and deleted it before reading. It could wait. Logan could not. He stayed until the nurse came to say Logan had stabilized and he could return in the morning for updates. David nodded with finality, stood, and walked out. His reflection in the glass hallway was of a man unraveling softly. In the parking lot, he sank onto a bench, head in hands, inhaling the cold air. He thought of all the photos he'd missed, first steps, first day of school, little home milestones, and how quickly kids change, how many happen without our noticing when we're always working. In that blur, a message popped up on his phone. Can't imagine what you're going through. Call anytime. It was from a fellow host he'd occasionally texted after industry events. He stared at it for a long second and then he typed back, "I'm not okay. Thank you." The words felt monumental, software human. It wasn't a grand rescue, just a gentle reaching out. But in that reach, David felt anchored again, reminded that even in the abyss, connection could tether you back. The night ended in a haze of waiting, tears, and hope, dangling on uncertain words from doctors. But in that shaky, half-dark hospital room, he held that paper crane in his palm, and for the first time since it all began, felt small, but not broken. But even in the darkest moment, an unexpected source of hope emerged. The light after darkness. Overnight, the world had narrowed to that small hospital room, that single heartbeat. The phone buzzed gently, and David looked down to see a message from a colleague, a host who wasn't in his inner circle but who mattered in that moment. "Whenever you're ready, I've got your back." No elaborate sentiment, no thinking of you, just that unmistakable offer to stand in the quiet space when the world feels too loud. In that, David felt held. Logan stirred, eyelids blinking open. Those first hesitant, too wide open eyes clung to him. David whispered, "Hey, champ," voice hoarse, cracking with relief. Logan managed a small nod, a murmured "hi," with a strangled breath. David's heart loosened. The room shifted. This was what mattered. Not scripts, not fan reactions. This. Krista appeared at the door, shoes silent on hospital linoleum. Her hair was pulled back, loose tendrils around her face. No dramatic music played. She walked over, gently kissed Logan's forehead, then rested her hand on David's shoulder. No words came between them, but the meaning was clear. We made it. We're still here. Back at home later that day, David carried the folded paper crane, its edges creased, slightly stained with hospital tears. He placed it on his desk next to a framed photo of a recent family trip, their laughter caught in midair. That delicate crane and that smiling photo became talismans, small reminders that life's fragility and beauty exist side by side. As filming resumed, David found himself standing in renovated kitchens and cozy living rooms, but his presence had changed. Conversations felt deeper. With each homeowner's story, he remembered his own home's heartbeat. A young couple hesitate over whether to stay in the home their child was growing up in. A family debates renovating versus relocating. These decisions no longer seemed like charming TV dilemmas. They felt real, imbued with weight. He listened more. He lived more. One afternoon between takes, David stepped into an empty hall and dialed Krista. Logan had just told his dad, "I love you so much," and David's voice caught. Krista laughed, tears in her tone, and reminded him how strong he'd been. For Logan, for her. It wasn't a planned conversation, but it became one of the most meaningful. That night, after Logan was asleep, David stood in the kitchen and stirred pasta, simple comfort food, nothing fancy. The aroma of garlic and olive oil filled the home. Krista came in, brushing against his arm, and leaned on the counter. No words, just presence. In their quiet teamwork, David felt restored. This was home. Over the coming weeks, he began saying no more often, to extra press junkets, to late-night shoots. He blocked out Friday nights for family time, pancakes, board games, kid stories. He wasn't walking away from success, he was redefining it. Social media messages began shifting tone, too. Fans shared their own stories of health scares, parenting, working from far away, and thanked David for being real, for choosing to show how success and vulnerability could coexist. The comments said, "Glad he's okay. Family first always." And from David, that felt like real connection. What do you think about David Visentin's journey? The highs, the heartbreaks, and the resilience that kept him moving forward? Share your thoughts in the comments.